So Boys and Girls Champs 2025 is over, but there's still concerns about some of the issues that came up during Champs. False starts, overseas students, quotas, officiating in general. Whole heap to talk about on this edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Thank you so much for being here. With me in studio, we have the president of ISSA, Keith Wellington. We also have with us the head coach of Calabar and Hydel, Corey Bennett, sports reporter and track and field commentator Renata Brown with us, along with Champs Meet director Anthony Davis. So we have the right people to answer the whole of your questions. And guess what, guys? You can start WhatsApp me again. Our WhatsApp number 876-254-0693. 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, give us your general location. Before we start with them though, we spoke to our friends in the sports department who have been covering Champs this year and of course for a number of years to ask them what they thought about the issues that came out during Champs this year. Take a look.
The large amount of false starts to start with, pun intended, and just the fact that we kept seeing on the reaction times that were not called back for being illegal, and then people having been disqualified retroactively. It's not something that we see happen a lot internationally, and I thought that was a big letdown for championships. As it relates to quota, it doesn't just deal with overseas athletes, it deals with any transfer from another school. Generally, if you transfer from another school, you sit out a year. Yeah? If you're going to sixth form, then you can compete automatically. But you can't have more than 2 such people being in that quota. In the case of Kingston College, the eventual winners, they were flagged for 6 prior to the championship starting. And then another school wrote to ISSA to say, hey, Casey has 3 or 4 people running in class 1, which should fall under the quota. So that's something that some answers need to be given by ISSA and Kingston College.
Unfortunately, this year's staging of ISSA's Boys and Girls Champs really was dominated by the number of false starts that were in the 5-day meet. Over 60 or at least 60 false starts at any meet is an issue. I would want to say it's almost like overkill, but it has to be a mixture of incompetence and or faulty equipment. Now, mind you, there were some glaring false starts, but when you look at the disparity between some of the things that were credited as false starts and some that weren't, questions were raised, and unfortunately the meet was overshadowed by that. So there were 2 athletes that were pointed out, Jerry Clement and Rashawn Lee, as being athletes who would push over Casey's quota, because you get 2 quota athletes. Casey said, no, we spoke to ISSA about these athletes, so there shouldn't be an issue. However, ISSA said Clement did not meet the exclusion to the quota rule. So they took out an athlete, Dylan, who was already a part of the 2 quota, disqualified him and put in Clement. And that for me was a strange thing.
The biggest talking point coming out of Champs, unfortunately for Casey and Hydel, who won the respective categories, was the false starts. 50 or 60 false starts. It was absolutely ridiculous, and it was an eyesore for most of the people watching it, including myself. Imagine, for the first time in the history of track and field, we see a thing where them call a retroactive false start. So an athlete is supposed to have false started in the instant of the race, but he was allowed to run the race, qualify for the next round, and then hours after, we are here see a man false start retroactively.
Obviously the false start whole thing, reaction time and all of that. Of course, the machines can malfunction. So that was a bit of concern for me. And then, of course, the controversy with the non-quota athletes and who is a quota and who is a non-quota and what's going on and persons losing points. And of course, with all the problems and the challenges, I think Corey Bennett had really lashed out at the officials because of Jamal Stevenson. That's the biggest issue when it comes to the false start.
We had a scenario where the lead manager has come forward and he has said the equipment was faulty. That in itself is very, very embarrassing.
All right, so where to start with all of that? Where to start? Well, let's start with the false start issue, because that seems to be the most egregious from observers, from participants. And Renardo, let me start with you. And I should say, before Renardo starts, anybody who say I'm in Calabar colors, I'm absolutely not. My Morante High wears green, and one day we will rise again like a phoenix. I'm calling it into being. So Renardo.
I'm not in St. George's College colors. I went to Bridgeport. But
it's neutral.
I am. But I think most of the guys there pointed it out. In terms of the false start, I think we had 18 in the 100 meters on day number 1 alone. A couple of those in class 3 for the boys. There were 3 of them from lane 7 alone. Now, the issue there is whether or not it was the system that was causing these false starts, or was it that the officials did not understand how to read the system. I point out that some of these false starts were blatant. So it's not like all of them were marginal false start and then we couldn't see them. So some of them were blatant, but the ones that weren't, and I think a little bit later on, Corey, of course, would talk about Jamal Stevens, for instance, in the semifinal of Class 1 boys 100 meters from lane 4, the retroactive false start. So his reaction time 0.089. So it is quicker than 0.1. However, Dante Watson from Jamaica College in Heat 2, lane 4 as well, credited with the same reaction time, 0.89. Now, the difference with that was that Jamal Stevens... 0.089. Yeah, 0.89. So Jamal Stevens was disqualified retroactively for a false start, but Dante Watson wasn't. So these are some of the questions that persons have in terms of why was that? Is it that it was not picked up? Is it that the starters overlooked it? And a lot of it is really consistency or inconsistency. And then it came down to the boys' 110-meter hurdles, where 3 athletes were deemed to have false started. They were disqualified and then reinstated. I understand that if it's the Jamal Stevenson thing. But you still also had a number of reaction times that were way out. I think there were reaction times like minus 6 minutes 20, minus 2 minutes something. And if you're looking at that, you're thinking, no, it can't just be the starters. It has to be the system. And I don't think a lot of persons up to now have really, got the information to say, yes, the system was the problem and not the starters, or it's a combination of the starters and the system. And I believe that a lot of persons really want to get a conclusion as to what really transpired during champs.
And before we get comment from Mr. Davis or Mr. Wellington, Mr. Bennett, let me bring you in on that same issue, the false starting and the retroactive false starting. My apologies, new phone, I need to put it on silent. Go ahead for me.
Yeah, I mean, it is just from a personal standpoint, where as a coach of Jamal Stevenson, we would have done the work to qualify for the finals. We had 2 boys in the finals, Shaquin Gordon and Jamal Stevenson. And just to be told, I mean, there's a 10-minute call at the call room for athletes to enter the call room to get onto the track. We were told probably about 5 minutes before that call that there's a new list, there's a new start list for the finals. And when we were listening, just kind of casually, we didn't hear Jamal's name. And that's how we knew. And when I went to the call room to inquire, they were clueless as to what happened. And I took the young man on the track to find out from the start is what happened.
All right, hold that thought. We'll pick up when we come back after the break. And remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, your general location. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with you on all angles. We're talking about champs this year, 2025, and some of the issues that have been raised. Remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693. One viewer says teenagers from far away, some maybe their first time in the stadium, kicked out. Their families from hours away watching and waiting to see them run. But no. Class 4 and 3, says this viewer, ought not to be kicked out as if it's an international competition. Why we so extra? No learning curve? What's the point of education? High school is for learning. I'm going to get a response to that, viewer, but let me just I want Mr. Bennett to finish what he was saying, Coach, because you were describing what I would say is a human side of what was happening. And you said you didn't hear your athlete's name and then you went out onto the track.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately got a little heated at the start line. And then I proceeded to go to where I thought was the protesting room or the appeal room. Just kind of asked them to hold the race until, a solution was had. And that they refused to do. And I'm saying just hold the race a little bit because the class 1 girls 100 meters on the track about to start. Just hold the race, make a decision, and then the race just went off, and I knew that was it. Once the race was run, that would have been it. And that was unfortunate for the young man who I believe was reinstated a couple of hours after that. And I just figured if they waited a little bit, then we could have gotten a better solution to the outcome. It confuses me as to how the young man who replaced him in the final knew he was to get ready for the final in 10 minutes. And that's where I'm having a little bit of a problem because we didn't know about the exclusion, much less an inclusion of the other athletes. So
okay,
it's a little bit confusing to me, and I'm hoping we can get some answers.
So let's start with that, and let me ask Mr. Wellington first and Mr. Davis to comment. You wanted to comment, first of all, in our Vox Pop. Our colleague Oral Tracy had said the retroactive false start thing has never been before been seen, and you're saying that's not quite true.
Right, that is not quite true. The retroactive false start is, first of all, it's legally permissible for an athlete to be disqualified after starting a race, after completing a race and not having been called back for false starting. And it has happened to a Jamaican athlete before. To an athlete who is currently involved at Champs. So it's not true that it is unprecedented.
But clearly not common.
Not common, and I'm not sure. And I don't believe it should happen either because there are mechanisms in place, there are mechanisms in place that suggest that if somebody false starts or goes quicker than the reaction time allowed, then they should alert the starting crew. So for it to happen at Champs multiple times, I think it's clear that something was off.
All right. First of all, general criticism about the false starts. Spencer said the final number he got was 61.
Yes, I think it's somewhere around that number. I think we had 58 up to Friday night, and then on Saturday we only had somewhere between 3 or 4. We are still waiting on the final reports from the...
Two that were reported. Yeah.
Well, 2 that were called back.
Yeah. Because if you look at the results, there are other times that would indicate false starts. If you look at
Saturday?
200 meter class 1 boys final, look at the reaction times.
Okay.
And they weren't called back.
Having said that, people saying worst Champs ever, never see so much false start, insane, crazy. What do you say?
So first of all, I agree that in terms of the false starts, I think that was the biggest issue at Champs. There were probably two or three other issues, but not as significant as the false starts. Depending on where you're sitting, if starting and so on is your only thing you're concerned about, then it's easy to say that. But I think that Champs generally, that made it look bad. But I have heard other persons who felt that it was a good Champs in terms of their enjoyment level. Obviously, the people who won probably feels as if it was a good Champs as well. But I don't think it's something that we can take lightly. So
tell me what that means. If you do you admit or do you accept that there was a problem?
I think there definitely was a problem, and the problem could also be that we have an issue with students, with athletes understanding how to start. So we can't rule out that.
Except we've never had this.
We've never had it before. We've never had it, and this is not. No, but I'm not going to cast judgment on anybody or take sides just now, but we have been trying to listen to all the explanations. We have actually asked for some specific data, but one of the explanation, either an explanation or excuse, depending on how you want to look at it, that we have heard is that for the preseason there were a lot of instances at the development meets where you had 200, 100 meter races, and so the organizers were just pushing out the athletes. So on your mark, get set, go, and no no inclination to call back people because they are false starting, because you were trying to get 200, 100 meter races done in 2 hours. And that is true. So we don't know how that affected the preparation of the athlete or their mindset. So I am sure that there are some that could be attributed to athletes' preparedness. And then there is the issue of the starters themselves, the personnel, whether or not they were doing things correctly, and the equipment itself, whether or not it was functioning correctly. So we have at least 3 options that we must consider. We can't throw out any of the 3.
I think a part of it, though, Mr. Wellington, is that while you can say that about the development meet, the regional championships, we didn't see that many false starts. So while we can say that the development meets, is 200, 100
I
meters,
saw quite a few at Western Champs.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that not to the magnitude that we saw at Champs. And that has to be explained.
Renata, if you may allow me.
I don't make Mr. David start. I mean, he's probably
and he should be the one talking.
Probably not complaining, but let me let you finish your point.
When I spoke to Mr. Davis, through explanation of what happened with Jamal Stevenson, Mr. Davis explained to me that, I guess the chief referee is what the title is, look through the results.
Referee coordinator.
Referee coordinator.
Well, let me just let him explain instead of you what he...
Let him explain.
All right. Let me go back a little bit and accept that the number of false starts is unprecedented, right? And as Keith mentioned, some of it could very well be attributed to the athletes, because 2 years ago, we actually had in our zone meetings the starters bringing the equipment to explain to the coaches and show what was happening, because we have had this before. Not the same magnitude, but we have had it before. And we thought it best to expose the coaches so they could better instruct the athletes. Now, the issue that Corey is speaking to, we met, we spoke for maybe half an hour.
This is a false start?
Yes, because I had to explain. I mean, to him, I couldn't just leave it in the air. So I asked him to come to see me and we spoke. What actually happened is that when the event went off, the results were sent down to the start coordinator. Sorry, not the start, the referee coordinator. And it is she who identified that somebody had a reaction time outside the limit and said this person should be disqualified. It is within the rules that the start referee can retroactively disqualify someone. The race is over, they realize that is it. So the athlete was disqualified. The issue that Corey have, and I'm admitting that it is a breakdown in the system, is that when that disqualification was announced and Calabar decided to appeal, that appeal that gone to the jury, I should have been advised that there is, call it litigation, pending, and therefore that event should not have gone off. So Corey...
Can I say something? Because to me, that doesn't even need any knowledge of the rules or law or anything. That just sounds like basic common sense. How could your officials not have acceded to the request to hold the race?
No, well, the persons who Corey went to wouldn't have had the authority to hold a race. But what I will what I will admit to is that they not having the authority should have passed that information on to me. So that is where the breakdown is in the scheme of things. Somebody should have said, Anthony, the Calabar coach is here, he is protesting, he is saying that
appeal.
We are waiting on the results of an appeal. And so it fell through the crack there.
It is incredible to me.
Yeah.
Say anybody officiating at any level in any decent championships, which Champs is, right?
Yes, yeah.
Big global, wouldn't understand that that they have to hold the race or have to call the meet director, and that's where I'm struggling. Because that sounds so basic to me.
I'm not questioning.
You agree with me, don't?
Yeah, but I can't, because I can't not agree with you. The thing is, I can't question what went through an official mind at a certain time of the day. Why, when Corey is saying hold the race, it didn't click. But the other thing that I would say to Corey, and I'm being serious. Generally in track and field, everybody come to the meeting manager for everything. But this time he didn't. He went to 2 rooms down the road.
That's where I was.
Which is correct.
That's where
You
I was
understand?
directed.
And so,
So you what?
That's where I was directed.
and so in my mind, I know people call me for just about everything.
Which is
right?
the-
So I'm not, let me say, I accept it that something fell through the crack. So
But you
when,
see, let me follow up on that, because the wider concern is that the officiating generally needs improvement. Do you accept that as well?
generally, yes, we need more training. We need to look at examine the systems in how we go forward. So there, in every case.
Hold that thought for me, Mr. David. So I have to take the break. We're going to pick up right here. And remember, you can WhatsApp me as well. You see me don't know the phone number yet. 876-254-0693. 876-254-0693. Give us your first name, your general location. We'll soon come back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're looking back at champs and some of the issues that have been raised. And let me share some of your comments coming in on our brand new WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693. Ray in Antigua, big up yourself, Ray. Ray says, why did it take the officials 4 days to figure out there were blatant issues with the system? And also, why were athletes being chased away when they questioned their disqualification, which is their right to do? I also have one viewer, okay, this is like 50 comments. One viewer saying there was at least one start where it was on your mark, stand up, and an athlete was sent off. Can you explain what is a false start? And another, Mike in Baltimore says, congrats, Coach Bennett. Among the most egregious and destructive performance of the starters, I'd like to highlight a feat that was overshadowed Coach Bennett. History-making feat of being the only coach to have finished first and second in boys and girls in the same championship. All right, thank you all so much. Keep those comments coming. And Mr. Davis was in the hot seat, but you know, if me follow now, he talks, he has to answer questions for the rest of the program. So let me come around and get comments on what we've been hearing so far, Renato.
Yeah, so from what I'm getting, one of the big issue is in terms of, as I said before, the inconsistency. Mr. Davis pointed out in relation to the training. This is not the first we're having it. And I think persons now are getting annoyed. This is not just champs. It happened at the national championships, where I think 1 year there was an athlete who they identified as false starting, and it wasn't the athlete. And I think what came out of that was that the blocks were in the wrong lane. There were other instances where someone clearly, there wasn't any movement, and that someone was disqualified from the race because, the big problem is the inconsistency is one, but the other part is, why are there so many false starts where you're not seeing any movement? You look at it over and over, you look at the slow motion, everything, and you're not seeing any movements from the athlete, but yet still it comes back that they're false started. Now at 0.89, that should be obvious, but it isn't.
Can I just say something to put in? We spoke earlier about some of the areas that we could attribute fault to. There was one school early on Tuesday who came to me to say that the bigger boys were complaining that they think the blocks, the track is a little bit soft. So when they go hard on the blocks, it is moving before they go. So that is something that we have to think about as well. And when you look at the statistics where most false start took place.
Sorry, say that again. The track.
Remember, the block is there's a peg that go anchored in the track.
Right.
So that particular coach said to me that, sir, the bigger boys are complaining that when they're in the blocks, it is as if the blocks is moving.
Oh, when they push it up.
When they push it back
And
on the block.
that may be credible when you think, if based on what I'm hearing, most false start took place class 1 and 2 boys. So not a lot of girls, relatively, and not a lot of class 3 boys. That's what I was told.
Let me see if I can help with that.
Okay, Renato, Mr. Davis, and Coach Bennett.
So here's my thing. If we're going by the results, and if reaction times are available, we think that those are the races that reaction times were taken from. This is the finals, day 2, finals 100 meters. If you check the website, the events where reaction times are available, class 2 boys, class 1 boys. The events that reaction times are not available, class 4 girls, class 3 girls, class 3 boys, class 2 girls, class 1 girls.
I noticed
That's for the 100 meters.
That's for the 100 meters. The semi-final, available reaction times, class 4 girls, class 3 girls, class 3 boys, class 2 boys, class 1 boys. Unavailable reaction times, class 2 girls, class 1 girls. Now my thing, if you're using the reaction times, it has to be for all events or you don't use it at all. So they would have to explain why is it that it seemed to me, and there are other events, that we had reaction times for more boys events, class 2 and class 1, than we had for girls events. And if you check the 400 meter finals as well, you would see something similar, where the class 1 boys have reaction times, but the class 1 girls are the girls. Class 1 girls don't have reaction times.
Reasonable point. Before Mr. Davis come back in, Coach Bennett, you are hearing.
Yeah, I just think there's blatant incompetence on the part of the starting crew. And I guess in one race, you can't have some persons with reaction times and some persons without reaction times. So all these races should be null and void, pretty much, because you can't have a set of 8 persons lined up in a race, and then some persons have reaction time readings and some don't. I mean, there are cases where somebody's reaction time was like negative 12.5, which means you reacted 12 minutes before the race started, which is just ridiculous. So I think they should have actually reinstated everybody. Because if you're going off reaction times, which I think needs to be revised, but at this level, where if you're using reaction times, then everybody, as Renata said, has to be judged with a reaction time. If not, you have to take out all the reaction times altogether. Right. In the class 110 boys, 3 boys were judged with reaction time that are below the required amount, and they were all reinstated the next day. So, too inconsistent.
All right. I wanted to respond to Renato when he spoke about somebody being disqualified, but you can see no movement. That is acceptable for the public watching. Remember, the blocks are pressure sensitive, right? So it means when you go into the blocks, you would have armed them. So without moving your hand, without moving any part of your body, if you ease the pressure off the blocks, it's going to register. And when if you watch the film 100 times, you're going to say there was no movement. But when you check the machine, the pressure was released, right? So it's good for the public to understand that somebody can be called with no visible movement. Now, what Korea said and what everybody has spoken to in terms of the inconsistency in the number of times, I think this possibly was the first time where we as organizers insisted that we want reaction time for everything. And it was during the championships that they got the equipment together. Because we actually went out and got the cable because we wanted to be able to display. Because remember, champs.
And that was after the fall started. Started. Right. So it didn't cause the fall started.
No, it was after. But remember, champs is a product that we are trying to improve every step of the way. So the decision was we want to be able to print the reaction time in the results, and we want to be able to display the reaction time. So I remember at the start of, when was it, on Friday, one of the photo finish crew came to me and said, Anthony, this equipment got wet. I don't know how, and we have to try and replace it, right? And they went and got a replacement. So what I'm saying to you, everything that has been mentioned comes together to get us where we are today. So
I very much appreciate the point about always trying to improve.
Yes.
But I get that you know, a year after year you want to be cutting edge because you know the quality of champs. But again, the point there about some reaction times being obviously way out, some reaction times not there at all. Doesn't that suggest that okay, maybe we don't have this aspect of it down? We're not using it this year. We have to sort it out.
Can I say something? Reaction times have always been used, you know. So it was used last year, the year before, the first day of champs. The difference is that this year we insisted that if you are going to be using it, then let the public see what is it you are using. So last year, 2019, when we had issues all of these times, reaction times were being used to say that somebody false started, but it was never shared with the public, never shared with us. But this year when we started on Tuesday, and recognized that we had 18 false starts, and the explanation we got is that yes, these are genuine false starts. See the reaction times here. We said, okay, so you are using this as an explanation or as evidence that the kids are false starting. Well, let the public see it.
But if what the public is seeing doesn't make sense or suggest,
right.
because apart from the fact that it raises questions for me as to what was happening every other year,
yes,
when we weren't seeing the reaction.
So and that is why, for me, I have taken the position that this is the silver lining in the grey cloud.
Which is what?
They've actually been able to say that this that you have been using all along, now that we know it is questionable because there are inconsistencies, and if what we saw this year is what was happening last year and the year before that we didn't know about, then we were being shortchanged.
Yeah. And the other thing that I want to point out is that when we did recognize something was wrong, so it's not as if we were running the championships and it going and everybody's just merrily going along their way. No, that was not the case. When we realized that the number of false starts was increasing, myself, Keith, and some of the other persons got together, we met with the starters and we said, listen, explain to us what is happening. So yes, we recognized that all wasn't well, and we were trying to get a handle on what is the issue, so that if there's a fix can be applied, then we would have been able to apply the fix. So we recognize that all wasn't well.
But we still don't know what the issue is that it?
Remember, Champs has just over, and we are still collating everything. We're asking for reports to come in, and we'll be able to look at all the stats, and then the stats will point us to, a likely issue. Why we had all these false starts.
And it will include checking out the equipment that was used.
Okay. I don't want to, sorry Ronaldo, but I don't want to miss something that one of my viewers said, because I saw our former colleague Karen Madden commenting on it as well, how student athletes were treated when they tried to query.
All right,
it felt like a picnic, sit down and shut up.
No,
you have no right to know.
While I can't say, while I can't say it didn't happen, what I will assure the public is that the primary role of a track and field official is not to disqualify people. Our primary role, and in our training, we are taught that our role is to ensure everybody get a fair opportunity to perform at their best.
Yeah, but we have a cultural thing that we don't really treat children like people a lot of time.
You may have it, you may have instances, but generally we have zone meetings, we listen to the coaches, we have official meetings, pre-event meeting with the officials, and whatever is brought to our attention, we share it with the officials, we share it with the coaches, and we try to get adjustments. So I won't sit here and tell you every single official will play it to the rule as it go along. However, we try to ensure as best as possible they conform, and part of it is to treat the people with respect. So the thing about
people, including children, I have to stress that.
No, all participants.
Because Jamaicans have a thing where them feel say children should not assert themselves.
Not heard.
No,
yes,
but whether it's class 4, class 3 or not, they are participants, and generally speaking, the official is, as a matter of fact, sometimes you have to say to the official, do not make an effort to help them. Help meaning, this is how you put your blocks, this is what you need to do. What we need to say is, this is a start line, you mustn't go over the line. But I have seen officials going out of their way to try and help them. So yes, you have...
Well, it's never a broad brush. I know Ronaldo is coming in as well, but I'm at the break, so let me take... I have to make sure the program not done. I've done that sometimes when the discussion is good. So let's take the break and we come right back and pick up and also talk, obviously, about what next. What happens going forward. We'll soon come. Thank you so much for staying with us. We're continuing to discuss champs. It looks like I need a whole day program for this, but a couple of your comments on our WhatsApp line. Damien in Kingston says, what level of discretion does a starter have when there's an evident false start? Can they reinstate athletes who have clearly false started? And then I have some people who just absolutely vex. One viewer says, Mr. Wellington, you're taking us for big head. You need to accept the fact that people are deliberately sabotaging Calabar to make KC win champs. And I'm reading that because I've heard it from some people. The time run by Stevenson would have seen him coming at least fourth, yet they gave him 1 point. I've been at champs every year since 1989. This was the worst ever call a spade a spade. So respond to your comment. Let me let Renata come in.
Yeah. One of the things we were discussing in terms of what happens from the gun goes off, the athletes get up out of the block, and then they're called back. What we saw at Champs this year was that you had reaction times lanes 1, 2, 3, 4. No reaction times lanes 5, 6, 7, 8. Lane 8 got kicked out for a false start. Sometimes you don't even, I think one of them, the winner, doesn't even have a reaction time. What happens? Who sends the information? Is it that someone sends the information that we're seeing online? Is it automated? Does the starter get a signal? Is there an automated gun that if there's a false start, it goes off? And it means that the system has detected a false start, or is it a manual system? I think these are some of the things that the public need to understand as it relates to the starting and the false start and all of that. Because we've seen it at the national championship where athletes are saying, I didn't false start. And you look at it, I understand the pressure block system. I do. But at 0.89, that's not a slight movement. That's a jump.
Let me let Mr. Davis answer.
The system is automated in terms of once they go in the blocks and it is armed, the starter will get a beep. The beep is an indication that something has gone wrong, and he will fire to recall or tell them stand up if nobody has actually come out of the blocks. After that is done, the machine itself has a drum with the thing is the recorded time is there, and that person manning that unit will then look at the times, and that's why sometimes you'll see an athlete is invited to go over there and look, and you show them the reaction time. They may accept it and just walk off, and they may dispute it. But that is how the system works in terms of they looking at the reaction time and decide whether you should have been disqualified.
So there was no sound for Jamal Stevenson, for Dante Watson, for Shaquan Davis, for all the guys, the three guys in the 110-meter hurdle semifinal. There was no sound, or is it that they ignore the sound?
No, let me say this to you. We have to respond to what the starter tells us. And we were told that there was no sound. He didn't hear the beep. So we can't dispute whether somebody heard a beep or didn't hear a beep. But the starter does have some discretion, and so that's why in some instances there's a doubt it is rule of faulty start, and everybody go back into the blocks and start again. So you ask if there was discretion. Yes, there is discretion.
So my follow-up to that is, sorry, Dian, is if that is the case, when Jamal Stevenson's reaction time came back at 0.89, why wasn't, or was the starter, was he asked, did you hear a sound? Because my thing is that if the starter said, I didn't hear a sound, then I don't think that you should go ahead and to disqualify that athlete if the starter did not hear a sound.
No, we have to go back. Remember, that you're talking about a timeline now. This is when we are investigating, trying to find out what happened. We were told at that point he didn't hear a sound, but we wouldn't have known that at the start, when it immediately happened. Remember also that it is a report that was sent to the start coordinator who picked up that the reaction time was off. So it wasn't picked up at the start. If it was picked up at the start, then he probably would have been disqualified at the start. But it wasn't picked up then.
All right, Mr. Wellington, my viewer says, Una Thief Calabar so Casey can win.
Well, I don't know who is Uno, but certainly I don't think that there was a concerted effort, or well, certainly not an official effort to disenfranchise anyone at all. And if we look at the circumstances, I think that there were a number of schools that were affected by the false start. So it was a general situation. Obviously, if you're in contention to win, it's going to hurt more, and you're going to squeal more.
I'm afraid to look at Coach Bennett.
but I think from my perspective, I agree that something was definitely wrong, but I wouldn't attribute it to an effort to have one team win as opposed to the other. I genuinely would not. The other comment made by that person.
Hold on. Talk truth, Coach Bennett. Is that how you feel?
No, I think we were targeted. And there are many instances I could list where I thought we were targeted. other than the false start rule. There's one instance where they tried to disqualify a 4x4 team in the heats, when clearly the flag went up before our boys even exchanged the baton.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
It's just crazy. And I just believe in many instances Calabar was targeted. You know, and I would have said before that...
Can you identify by who?
Who what?
Was targeting Calabar?
Who? Well, the officials, generally.
Yeah, let's leave it at
in
officials.
fairness, I need to comment. Corey, when you say the flag went up, we don't know why the flag went up. And we don't know for who.
But Calabar was disqualified.
No,
we know why it was
let me finish. A flag goes up at the box. Nobody watching can know which lane had an infraction.
It wasn't a lane. It was not a lane. It was from the third leg to the ankle leg. There's no lanes. And when the Edwin Allen boy moved off, the flag went up before the Calabar boy exchanged the baton.
I actually...
No, remember we have video referees. So when you see somebody raising the flag on the field, they have to write the report. But the people in the video referee room will be looking on the thing to see when the baton was exchanged and all that. Or if the athlete stepped on the line. So those are things you are not going to see.
We were disqualified.
Yeah.
And reinstated because the flag went up for the Calabar team to be disqualified. The Edwin Allen team, who had changed the baton at the time when the flag went up, were not disqualified.
But you were reinstated, right?
Why were we disqualified in the first place?
I don't know what the officials saw.
For me, the bigger question, though, is that it's disturbing that any participant at all comes away feeling that they're targeted or that they were being unfairly treated in favor of anybody else. So how are you satisfied? Let me ask Mr. Wellington first and then Mr. Davis. That there are checks and balances in place to prevent victimization of any school?
There are checks and balances in terms of from an official or human perspective. Anthony will tell you that we are at pains to point, and I must acknowledge Chairman of the Champs Committee, Mr. Richard Thompson, along with the other committee members, we are at pains to point out that there should be no bias. We remove people who feel that have a bias that they can't get over. We ask people, even if you have a bias, everybody goes to a school. So we try, but in terms of the actual operations, just 1 second there. In terms of the actual operations, yes, there are checks and balances. That is why his 4x4 team was reinstated. Right? That is why the jury ruled that Stevenson should be reinstated. So there are checks and balances. Sometimes we don't get it absolutely right. In the case of Stevenson, we messed up. Right? The system messed up. Right? But most times we get it right. 90% of the time we get it right.
Yes. And the other thing I should point out to is not every time
keep him on show, him have a one show.
It's not every time that you see a flag go up in any discipline, it means automatic disqualification. When you write the report, the track umpire is the eyes of the referee. So when they write their report, they can send it to the referee, who may rule that this is inappropriate and turn it down right there and then.
But go to my wider question. Yeah. Let's say you haven't been able to shield out personal biases, because the personnel should be the last line of defense. You should have systems in place that mean that even if I am have purple blood running through my vein or green and black blood running through my veins, the system should prevent any kind of bias affecting the championship. Are you confident that you have systems that do that?
Yes, because we have actually removed officials at different times who we believe have not been acting as professional as they should be. So but you have to identify it first, and then we take the step to remove the person.
I was about to address something that Mr. Wellington said about it. I think the big problem is that if you're doing so many things retroactively, it shows that there's a problem. Stevenson retroactive. They instance with Calabar and the 4x4. I was on commentary with doing Excel. Now, Edwin Allen made the exchange, and the flag started coming up before Calabar even got to the point to make their exchange. And we were a bit, surprised as to what the flag was for. And I understand what you're saying, Mr. Davis. But when you look at that, the 200-meter Class 1 girls, disqualified, reinstated, there were too many instances at this championship alone that would give persons the kind of confidence that the officials that we have at our biggest track and field event are, competent enough to take us in the right direction.
Having said that, I'm just about out of time, so I'm going to go around the table 30 seconds. So what needs to happen now, Renardo? Let me let you pick up. Having said that, what needs to happen now? 30 seconds.
I think we really have to look at the start crew and the officials. If we have to get persons from overseas, if we have to do more training, we have to do that because this is our product, and we have to get it right because the world is watching.
Mr. Wellington.
I agree with Renardo. We have already started the review process by asking for all the reports, and we'll have a sit-down meeting over the next few days to iron out, to see where we go in terms of definitive steps. It's getting foreign nationals. Actually, one of the start coordinator,
and we did it last year.
The start coordinator was somebody from outside of Jamaica. So he had responsibility to coordinate everything that was happening. So it was a foreigner. It didn't solve our problem. All right. And we have taken actions. We can't name names, but in this, including in these scenarios, I'll tell Corey off here.
I just think that, Mr. Wellington is doing a great job at ISSA, and it is a product that we have that needs to be cherished. And I think the only way for us to have confidence in champs, again, is to have international officials.
And Mr. Davis.
The next step is what we have done before in terms of a review, and the review includes items, how to improve, what to change, what to do differently. So it is not like this champs because you had all the false start. We are suddenly going to be doing this. This is normal for us to have a post-event review. And Corey will tell you that he has seen changes in how the championships have been run. The other coaches over the years, primarily because we review everything. Also because we have zone meetings and we listen to the coaches, we have meetings with officials, and when we get suggestions that is affordable and make sense, we implement them. Right. And we'll continue to do that.
Looking forward to hear what will come out of this year's review. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time here. Thanks as always to you at home for watching. Come back next time for another edition of All Angles. On behalf of the news and production teams, I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Have a great evening. Stay safe. And I'll share you my school motto, Carpe Diem.